A Christmas Quantum Healing Session Story with Jesus by Candace Craw-Goldman. One of the last comments my client Jay made as he prepared for his quantum healing hypnosis session was, "Please do me a favor and don't invite Jesus in. Not for healing or anything like that. If you want to ask some of the saints or some angels to help or whatever, that would be okay. Just not Jesus." The comment seemed a bit harsh, and it was. I remember feeling stunned. I didn't remember any previous client making a statement like that, or even anything close to it. But I could understand why he said it. I just nodded and said, "Okay." Jay came from a very large and strict Catholic family. He went to Catholic schools and was required to attend every Mass that his mother did. And that seemed to be all of them. He felt like he was there nearly every day. He was an altar boy and truly disliked the ceremonies. He also had some very unpleasant things to say about the nuns in his school. They spanked him, hit him, disciplined him frequently, and he had no fond memories of the Catholic Church at all. However, as was his family's tradition, the day he turned 18, he was allowed to make up his own mind about his life. And that also meant he was then allowed to choose his religious instruction, or to choose none at all. He described that as a glorious day of freedom. He never stepped foot in a Christian church after that. It had been decades, and the resentment of his early life, although hidden from most who knew him presently, most certainly remained. In the subsequent years, he took up yoga and eventually became a yoga instructor. He studied Buddhism. He was friendly, athletic, and funny. He smiled often and easily. He was having a QHHT session simply to learn more about himself and perhaps more about his spiritual path. He had mentioned he was a regular meditator, so I was hopeful for a deep and profound session. I was not to be disappointed. Jay went deeply and easily into a trance state. When he entered the scene of his past life, he smiled broadly. These were the very first words that he said when I asked him what he saw. "I see a little baby Jesus in a manger." And he said this with laughing. Me. "Oh, how do you know this baby is Jesus?" Jay said, "I can just feel it. Everything, from the manger to the happy moments, to the sight, to the animals." He continued to grin widely as he described the scene before him. Considering his one and only request concerning the session was not having Jesus invited to be in it, I was a bit taken aback at his reaction. I was also highly amused, and I knew the story that was going to play out here would be one I would never, ever forget. And I was right. "Tell me, what does the manger look like?" Two wooden X's, and almost like two pieces of plywood making a V shape, and hay streaming all over the place. Looks kind of like a thatched roof. There's just a happy baby in there. And are there any other people there? The mother is there. Mary is there. It doesn't seem like the birthday itself. She's just sitting to the side, fondly looking on. Part 2. In Part 1, we had just heard the regression subject, Jay, describe himself in a scene where he believed he was looking at a birthplace and scene of Jesus Christ. Many thoughts were running through my mind. Could we really be time traveling back to the birth of Jesus? Knowing the discoveries and adventures Dolores Cannon had in her explorations of history and beyond, I knew almost anything was possible. For a moment or two, I wondered if Jay was fabricating the experience, but I didn't think so. Firstly, his obvious avoidance and distaste of anything related to Jesus would make it unlikely he would voluntarily force a scene with him. His interests and passions truly were focused on much different things, primarily his interest in Buddha, his yoga practice, and current-day relationships. Also, I was reading his body signs, and he was already deeply entranced with rapid eye movement and a very still body. As I recall, the actual day of his quantum healing hypnosis session was in mid-August, and we were in Texas, so a time for very hot weather. Jay was laying on the bed in shorts, and I was wearing a summer dress. But the whole room was filled with that certain something, that amazing energy that one sometimes feels during Christmas. And it almost felt like energetically snowflakes were gently falling outside. Carols might be being sung off in the distance. And this energy got stronger by the minute. And I felt the pressure change in my own ears. Something really amazing was beginning to happen. Jay had just mentioned that the mother, Mary, was sitting off to the side when all of the above thoughts were running through my mind. It was time to ask more questions. Can you describe the mother for me? She's lovely, young and serene. She's wearing blue and tan garments. She's very happy. Does she know you're there? Is she aware of your presence? Now, this question was a critical one. We had not yet determined how, what, or who was observing the scene that Jay was describing. He could provide so many different answers to that question. Truly anything was possible. As Dolores had discovered that consciousness can experience infinite perspectives. Jay could be experiencing a past life as Joseph. He could be a shepherd. He could even possibly be one of the stable animals or even an inanimate object, like a table. He could be free and formless as an energy being from another world or simply consciousness observing the scene itself. This was going to be interesting. And this is how he answered the question. Yes, that's the feeling that I have. Yes. Yes, she does. Can you describe yourself to me? Can you look down at your feet? What do you see? I seem to be wearing some, well, I don't want to call them white shoes, but white something or other wrapped around my feet. The answers to my question about his feet is one of the most important moments in a quantum healing hypnosis session. Sometimes the answer is, I don't have any feet. But that was not the case in this regression. Jay was solidly finding himself inside a human body. Now, as interesting as an animal energy consciousness can be, I was thrilled to know we were about to talk to who or what seemed to be an actual human being present at the scene of Christ's birth. I had so many questions to ask. But he had feet and shoes, and these were very good indications that he was human. I asked, what does the white covering seem to be made of? What kind of material? It's some sort of heavy cloth. I see. Can you scan up your body and describe what else you see? It seems like my legs are covered with the same thing as the shoe fabric. The foot fabric and the calf fabric is the same. It's a white fabric that slightly takes the shape of the leg, but it's still comfortably loose. What else can you tell me about your clothing? It feels like there's a blue overcloak or overrobe that hangs to about a quarter past my knees. The fabric is rich and clean. You feel like cotton or cotton silk, white cotton, blue silk. Tell me, do you have any head coverings or adornments? Yes. I have a covering on my head. It's white, almost like a sultan's. There's a jewel in the center. The jewel is soft blue and translucent. Also, I have a beard. So you're in a man's body? Yes, and I have dark, long dreads. Now I knew he meant dreadlocks, which are a kind of hairstyle. Other than the jewel in your headdress, do you have any jewelry or other adornments? Feels like a gold link on my left arm, a gold cuff. And on the ankle, maybe left wrist, left ankle, gold cuffs. I know I began to wonder, as you might already be too. Was this one of the 3 wise men who came to visit Jesus at the stable? Was he a magi? Were there others there too? As Jay settled into the scene, shortly after the Christ child's birth, I felt chills sweep over my body. How amazing to have this opportunity to explore this moment in history. How many times in my own life had I wondered about this scene? Hadn't much of humanity, Christian and non-Christian alike, wondered the same thing? What would we learn? What could we possibly find out? What kinds of questions would you have asked given the opportunity to have a glimpse into one of the greatest moments in the history of mankind? Part 3. In part 3 of this quantum healing Christmas story, the client Jay was describing himself as a well-dressed, bearded, dark-haired man with dreadlocks, observing the Christ child in the manger with his mother Mary sitting nearby. So you're standing there in front of the manger and Mary is there. Are you holding anything in your arms? Water. How are you holding water? It looks like a big old donkey bladder or a canteen made out of a natural bladder that's been stitched. I feel like I'm presenting the water. You are presenting the water? In what way? I'm presenting it to Mary, but I'm sort of standing back from the scene a little bit, like I'm in the doorway. I see. Can you tell me who else is there? What else is going on around you? Are there other people there? I see the baby, the mother to the right, father to the left of the baby, and I see a donkey lying in the background. There are 2 more people to my right. I'm not looking at them at the moment, but I feel their presence. I know they're there. There's a dark-skinned man wearing black and gold. He doesn't have the darkest of skin, but his is darker than mine. It's black and gold. I see. Is this dark-skinned man someone who's known to you? I don't know. I think I know him. He sure seems bent on telling me something, though. I see. It's almost like he's grabbing my right elbow and trying to whisper something into my ear. It sounds like he has an important message to give you. Let's hear what he has to say. He says something that gives me the chills. We're here, he says. This is it. How does it make you feel when he says that? I get goosebumps that start on my right side and lead to my left side. I'm absolutely covered in goosebumps. Does this person have anything in their arms? Are they carrying or presenting anything? He has my right elbow in his left hand, and he's just pointing towards the center of the room. I see. And that's where the babe is laying. Is that where the manger is, or is he pointing to something else? It doesn't actually seem like the babe is the reason we're there. It seems like we are there for something that actually has to do with Mary. Okay. I was about to ask more about why they might be there for Mary when Jay began to be very focused on his physical body within that scene. My right arm is experiencing something very odd, very powerful. It's really interesting. Okay. The more you describe it, the more we will learn what's going on. It feels like intense, isolated goosebumps. My right bicep, my right elbow. right where the dark-skinned man is touching me. It's like his hand is going right through my body. It's so strange. Jay didn't seem to be able to say much more about the sensations in his arm, or what was happening to the body he was in, nor any more specific connection to Mary and his own presence, so I moved on and asked more questions about what was going on around him. You said you felt another presence as well. Are you able to see that other presence now? He's a shorter man, somewhat squat. He has a white beard. He's wearing blue and gold. What sort of color skin does this fellow have? Lighter skin. He seems much older than us, too, whereas the black and gold guy has dark hair and a dark beard. It's a dark beard, but it's not long. This other fellow has a white beard, and the white beard is long. But he doesn't show his hair. He has a headdress. It's very fine. A blue and gold headdress. So dark blue, it's almost like black silk. Whereas my headdress and the others is sort of above our heads, this guy's head covering sort of drapes, like black silk draping over the shoulders. And he has a black and gold cloak. These are not ordinary garments. They are rich and amazing fabrics. These two men are, well, they're my traveling companions. I see. Can I ask, how did you know how to get here where you are? That bright white light. Can you tell me more about this light? 4 long rays, long points of light emitting from the center, and the rays curl back a little bit on themselves. They went down side to side and curled back a little. It almost feels like 4 hands were pulling the sky apart and letting this light through. That's a beautiful description. Tell me more about this light. It was intriguing. It was unknown. It was joyous to behold. So everyone could see the light, or was it only visible to some? It feels like it was seen by those who were meant to see it. Quote, "In an abundance of water, the fool is thirsty." Close quote. And when you first saw it, what happened? How did people act? What did you believe the light was for? It must have caused quite a sensation to those who could see it. There's sand passing over the tops of the dunes as I traveled. As we traveled, it actually was slow, steady progress. I don't see people excited. I see steady perseverance, inquiry. I'm feeling like it was a guiding light. It was such an amazing journey. I was not, and my eventual companions were not, what you would call seasoned travelers. Camels appeared when we needed them. Water and food were offered as soon as we drank our last drop and ate our last bite. We were taken care of in every way you could imagine, without any plan of travel. Not once were we bothered or accosted on our trek, only assisted and helped. I see. Can you tell me where you're from? Maltas. Tell me, what did you do back where you came from? How did you spend your days? In study. As the teacher or as a student? Or was it self-study? I see the little white-bearded one in front of me, sitting in front of me. He sits cross-legged in front of me, happy and knowledgeable. Does he seem like your teacher, or were you studying together? It feels like an older brethren in the path, a guide, a mentor, but he doesn't seem to want to be called teacher. What was your main focus of study? Joy, internal discovery, self-fulfilling joy. And then you found out about the light. And then there was the light. It looked like a comet. And the other fellow with the dark skin with the black and gold garments, was he someone that joined up with you later? Yes, he feels like a joiner. He may have come from elsewhere. Feels like Northeast Africa, maybe further east than Egypt. How did he find you? He was simply on his own journey. He was following his own light. We were all doing this. We were following our own light. What was that like as you made your way towards where the light was shining? Dark, a bit lonely, but with pleasant company. Were you excited? Sustained, quelled excitement, contained excitement. Did you know that the light would be shining upon a baby? Or did you just know to follow the light? We just knew to follow the light. We were just following the light. And then here it is in the session where Jay began to whisper, "You must know this. The light, it was so unique and so powerful, and it drew you in. And it was, wait, we've gotten this story so wrong. So wrong. It's not all what we've been told." Part 4. Jay provided some background information about the man, his traveling companions, and from where he had come. He was describing the light, and they followed, and had a revelation he was about to share. He had said that we have the story of the nativity, he meant, all wrong. Jay's voice and demeanor changed at this point, quite dramatically. He began to whisper and also to weep, silently, as he spoke. There were pauses in his description where he took deep breaths. He was literally vibrating, and the air in the room where we were also began to vibrate. And Jay continued, "You must know this. The light, it was so unique and so powerful, and it drew you in, and it was, wait, we've gotten this story so wrong, so wrong. It's not at all what we've been told. What do you mean we've gotten the story so wrong?" Jay's conscious mind was coming forth now to speak in the present tense about our current life. This isn't completely unheard of during a session by any means. We as humans are able to have dual and even triple or even more consciousness focal points. Often the conscious mind has been watching the session all along but simply silent and allowing the other aspects of the soul to speak. This is the very embodiment of the concept of multidimensionality. Looking back on this session, this particular moment of it may very well have been the whole reason he came that day. He continued, "We've gotten it all wrong." He whispered again, and he paused, and he took several deep breaths. He began again, voice quivering and tears streaming from his eyes. "The light is not coming down from the heavens to this child. It is coming from this child, and it is rising up into the heavens." Astonishment enveloped us both. I think I literally stopped breathing for a time and was silent. Jay took some moments and simply watched the scene, breathing deeply, with tears leaving his eyes. I sat simply stunned myself at this idea and stayed quiet for a bit. I found myself recreating all the stories I had ever heard about this scene of the birth of Christ and the Nativity, and considered the possibility that indeed humanity did not fully grasp exactly what this event was all about and what happened that day. Without prompting, Jay began to talk more about the light. This intense light, this pure light, is definitely coming from the manger and lighting up, and not punching a hole through the scene in the sky, but it's. He was definitely having trouble trying to describe in words what he was seeing. It must be amazing to be there witnessing this. Yes, I remember. I remember the first time I experienced my body as white light. This is the first time I think I saw this light. Now, me as the practitioner is wondering who exactly is remembering this, which body was experiencing the white light memory, and it really wasn't clear. It could have been the wise man, another incarnation, could have been his higher self remembering another body or lifetime. I made a choice to ask about the experience itself first, hoping to get more complete information about all of it. What was that like? It started in my feet and went up to my calves and quads and hands and forearms, upper arms, and my torso all became brilliantly white. It felt so wonderful, so pure. I felt pure. And just as I was going to ask more questions to try to understand when and how this light experience and memory was felt and by whom, Jay began to speak about something intense happening in the scene. It looks like I'm trying to go into, through the light now. I am moving it into it myself. It looks like a fountain on the other side. I went through it. Now I was trying to understand this. And then, where's your body? Jay, having trouble with his words, said, a manger. It's back in, and he pauses. I waited for him to settle. Do you feel separate from your physical body at the moment? No. It's a weird but interesting connection between the two. It's like a double gushing fountain. One from the top and one from the bottom, and in between. With what in between? It's like a thin connection in between, but it's often in these sessions, the experience is so unlike anything we as humans have had before that clients search for words or analogies to attempt to explain what is happening. He seemed like he might be describing a toroidal shape or something similar. I decided it might be good to give him interrupted time to experience the light so that he could describe it more fully for us both. I imagined he was describing a toroidal field. Well, I said, just enjoy that light for a few minutes. I want you to enjoy that light exactly where you are in silence for a minute or two. And while you're there, you could think about why it is that you're there, what it is that you're exploring and learning, while you are full of that light coming from both directions. And I allowed several minutes to pass. At some point, I began speaking again. Do you have any more thoughts as you find yourself in the middle of this white light? Any more revelations or anything you can share? Jay said, this is the gate of heaven. I've been looking for it. It's not a recent choice to look for it. I've been guiding all of my choices with this in mind. That sounds really amazing. And while this is all going on, this amazing connection and experience that you're having at the gate of heaven, what is happening with your body? I could still feel my legs down below, still standing in the room. I'm in both places. I'm standing down there. It's the sensation that my torso is really long and I've poked up half of my body and I'm looking around, taking it all in. It's amazing. So much is possible from this vantage point. That sounds like quite a rush. Is this what you thought might happen, or are you completely surprised? I'm surprised. I've been surprised ever since I wound up back in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem. Is there anything else you would like to tell me about what's happening right now? Your thoughts, your feelings about what's happening in this scene? Make sure all of what is important is being shared. Yes, that it relates to what is happening to this life, manifestation currently, learning how to pass through that gate of heaven. It almost happened to me once before in this other plane, and at the last second I remembered that I didn't go. I heard a voice say, "Easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to pass through the gate of heaven." And just like that, I didn't go. It's nice to let myself go through the gate of heaven this time. And just like that, Jay was finished with the nativity scene, and the session moved on to an entirely different life experience and scene. I did not get a chance to ask more questions of the man with the dreadlocks. Like most clients, Jay came for one session only, and one session answered all of his questions and addressed all of his current issues. His higher self explained that the reason that that particular lifetime was shown to him was to remind him not only of the wisdom he'd had in that lifetime, but in every life he's lived. It was shown to remind him that he had the pure light of the Creator inside of himself, because he was a part of the Creator as his creation. Jay did contact me about a week later and relayed a long list of the most extraordinary Jesus-themed surprises, messages, and synchronistic events. Jesus was suddenly everywhere in Jay's life, on billboards, license plates, fortune cookies, and more, each with a humorous and helpful event taking place for his life when he noticed. He wasn't insisting on removing Jesus from his life and world any longer. He welcomed this new and magical connection with Christ and was practically giddy as he described some of these events. Every bit of his resentment towards Christianity or the church or Jesus himself had completely vanished. He told me, I bet most people would have a hard time accepting themselves, having once lived a life as a famous biblical character. I get that. And you know what? I don't even care if it was actually a real past life or not. I think it might have been real. It sure felt real. And in my heart, I believe it to be real. And I will never forget that scene. The child, and the manger, and the light. But the most important thing is this. I know now that I am, without a shadow of a doubt, absolutely connected to the pure light of Christ consciousness. And then he laughed a little bit and said, even though I call myself a Buddhist.